and welcome back to another episode of my Vlogtober videos. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I wanted to sit down and have a chat with you specifically about one project that I have been working on recently, which is a bit of a new kind of project for me, which is this guy. This is the bag that I recently finished. So this is the Nappy Bag, which is a pattern by Sewing Patterns by Mrs. H, which I recently completed. So yes, I am a little bit insane. One of the things that I wanted to do, it was about midway through the pregnancy that I had this idea, was I had been looking at nappy bags online, or diaper bags as you may call them depending on where you're from, and I wasn't really seeing anything that was igniting any passion in me. And obviously when you're expecting a small human, there's a lot of expense involved, a lot of things that you need to buy, and I was getting a bit fed up of spending money on things and not necessarily having them gel with my style 100%. And one thing that I was finding is that the two different kinds of nappy bags that I was seeing were ones that either were not to my taste at all but were relatively inexpensive, which is fine, or ones that were slightly nicer, but my goodness, the price of them, they were very, very pricey indeed. So this kind of planted the idea in my head that maybe I could actually make a bag, because being a maker, I thought, how difficult is it to actually make a bag? And I remembered earlier this year when I was at a trade show event with my job, I had seen Sewing Patterns by Mrs. H. They had been vending there, and I remembered that they have a lot of different bag patterns, which is how I kind of got back to their website and found their patterns. So I decided that I was going to make this nappy bag. The specifications that I was really looking for a bag was something that would be of a generous size, because I am an overpacker in many ways, and also I'm attracted to things that have more than just kind of basic features. So I was looking for a bag that had lots of pockets, lots of kind of compartments and that type of thing, because that just makes me happy. When I buy a bag commercially just from the shop, I like something that's got kind of inner pockets and pouches and that type of thing. And the one thing that I would say about Sewing Patterns by Mrs. H was that all of her patterns are incredibly well designed and well thought out in terms of all of those little details that some other places may be lacking, which is how I decided upon this one. It was also the convenience of the fact that it was a PDF pattern, so that I could print it out straight away. Pretty much found this pattern while suffering a bout of insomnia, and printed it out later that day, and was able to kind of start thinking about working on it very, very quickly. And if you have been watching my Vlogtober videos relatively regularly, you will know that I have now completed my nappy bag. Here she is. I absolutely love this bag and the fact that it's finished and it's unique to me. It's very much to my personal taste. The colour is exactly what I wanted. The fabric is gorgeous and very hard wearing. I will go into the fabric in slightly more detail in a little bit. And yeah, I am so happy with how this turned out. To start off with, the fabrics that I used for the bag, I wanted something a little bit more hard wearing than regular quilting cotton, which is what is recommended in the pattern. So I decided to go for waxed cotton because it's waterproof, it's quite hard wearing, and also I think that it looks really, really lovely when it ages, because it kind of crinkles up the more you use it, which gives it this lovely weathered look, which I think is very aesthetically pleasing. I actually purchased the fabrics that I needed from one of my favourite stores here in the UK. They do have a bricks and mortar store, but also a very, very lovely website, and that was Guthrie and Garney. They have this waxed cotton in a variety of different colours, but I chose two different colours, which was the lovely kind of deep burgundy red colour and also a kind of tan brown as the contrast for the straps. Working with this fabric was quite unusual. I've never used waxed cotton before, and it doesn't necessarily behave like any fabric that I've used before. You need to be careful when you're pressing it, obviously, because you don't want to be pressing directly onto something that's waxed, because it can melt, and all different kinds of things can go wrong with it. But in general, it is a beautiful fabric. It looks really, really lovely, and it's already had a little bit of water on it, and it hasn't been affected by it at all because it is waterproof and glorious. The lining fabric I also got from Guthrie & Ghani, which is just a lovely cotton with a floral pattern, but it's not too girly. It's quite understated and goes very, very well with the kind of colour scheme in general. So again, I'm very, very happy with how that turned out. In terms of all of the additional bits and pieces for the bag, so all of the hardware, it was a little bit challenging to find everything. I don't know a huge amount about bag making, so I didn't kind of have a massive resource to draw on when it came to things like different clips and buckles for the bag. I found that searching on Etsy was incredibly helpful, and I was able to order the majority of the zips and fastenings and everything from Etsy, and all of them are in a kind of antique brass finish, which again works very well with my aesthetic. I wasn't looking for kind of blingy chrome or anything like that. It doesn't really go with my style, so I'm very happy that pretty much every fastening on this bag has that lovely antique brass finish, which just looks really, really great. I also wanted to make my bag look a little bit more unique, so I actually included 2 patches by one of my favourite artists, Ella Masters, and I think that they just add just a little bit more pizzazz to the finished project. They make it a little bit more special, and I just love how they look against the colour of the main fabric of the bag that I picked. So yeah, going into the actual construction of the bag, the actual design of the bag, one thing, like I said, that really drew me to this pattern was the fact that there are so many different compartments, because I think when it comes to a bag for a baby, it's really great to have different places where you can store different things and just have as much versatility as possible. Plus it's just more fun to make something that has all of these additional bits and pieces in it, although it does kind of complicate the process of making. But let me talk you through exactly all of the different compartments that there are in this bag. So we'll start with the outside. The main 2 front and back sections of the bag both have pockets. Now, one of them has a front flap pocket, which is this one here. It has a front flap pocket that's finished with piping, which inside is just your standard pockets. You can add some little duckbill clip kind of fastenings for things like your keys, or obviously if you're going to be using this as a nappy bag, you can put dummies and that type of thing attached to those, which I thought again is a really lovely touch. It's something that I wouldn't have thought of including in a bag, so in terms of design I think that that is amazing. I also finished it with one of these magnetic fasteners, which I think is really, really lovely, and it's nice that you get that little pop of lining fabric when you open that up. The other side has more of a slip pocket, so there's no flap on this side, again finished with piping, which I did in this contrasting cream. It opens with a magnetic fastening as well, and inside there is a hidden zip pocket. So they suggest in the pattern that you could use this to store your wallet, to store your keys and that type of thing. It's a really, really lovely little hidden feature to have that zip in there. Also on the outside you have 2 elasticated pockets on each side of the bag. So you have one on this side and one on the other, just to slip things into quickly, so maybe a bottle or something like that. And again, they are finished in the external fabric, but it's also fully lined, so it looks beautiful. That's pretty much everything for the outside of the bag. In terms of what's going on inside, there's even more fun stuff to be getting on with. So like the outside pockets, there is a hidden zipped pocket on the inside of one of the side panels of the bag. You have another zipped compartment, so you can again maybe stash away things like your phone, or if you want to put things like dirty nappies, for example, in a plastic bag, you can zip those out of the way and just get them all tucked out of sight. There are also large side pockets. You can decide whether or not you want to have them the entire length of the bag, or whether you want to divide them into two. So I did both options. On one side I have the long elasticated pocket which stretches across the entirety of the bag, and then on the other side I just sewed down the middle, so it was divided into two little pouches. You have one there and one there, which works really, really nicely. The other thing that you have is little elasticated straps inside the side panels of the bag, again in case you want to have things like baby bottles or a water bottle in there, so you can literally just slot it into the side of the bag. It'll be held in place by the elastic and you always know where it's going to be. Like I said, I haven't seen another bag as well designed in terms of all of these internal pockets and additional features. The majority of other patterns that I saw within a similar price range were all a lot more simplistic, kind of just one big sack bag with nothing much more going on than that. So in terms of design, I really do think that this bag is superior to the majority of other similar bags that I saw on the hand making bag market. So now I'm going to go into the pattern specifically and just kind of talk about pros and cons, I guess. So like I said, the pros of this pattern, really, really great design. Absolutely love all of the features, and I love how accessible it is in terms of being a PDF, insofar as I could print it out the same day, although I will be going into that in a little bit more detail in just a second. So in terms of the bag itself, I think that it is a beautiful thing and I am really, really, really happy with it. Saying all of that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this pattern with flying colours, and that is for several reasons. I started struggling with the pattern way back when I actually started printing it off initially. So you do get your entire instruction booklet, as I've got here. It's lots of colour pictures and all of that type of thing. There are 21 pages of instructions, all of which do have photographs. But one of the first things that irked me when I started working on this pattern is that when I started to print off my PDF pieces, so it has lots of different pieces all like this and you kind of stick them together, I thought this doesn't look like it's enough pattern pieces, because you only actually get, I think, maybe 6 pattern pieces that have been pre-designed. But there are many more pieces than that that are part of the pattern. And I realised that for probably at least half of the pattern pieces, you were just given dimensions of the pieces of fabric that needed to be cut, rather than actually having pattern pieces printed out. And I feel that I've worked out why that is. Anything that is a specific rectangle or square shaped pattern piece, you were just given the dimensions of the fabric. So for example, if you were doing something that was 20 inches by 5 inches, but it was a rectangle, you wouldn't be given an actual pattern piece, just the dimensions. And although I understand that in theory, when I've paid for a pattern, I expect to have all of the pattern pieces included, because I'm not the type of person who will literally just draw those dimensions straight away onto the fabric. I went and created my own different pattern pieces for each one of these not included pieces with the pattern, so that I can have them if I want to make the bag again in the future. And some people may not mind it, but I personally found it a little bit lazy that those pattern pieces haven't also been included as a part of the pattern, and that was a disappointment from the very beginning, because I know that sometimes with cutting out fabric, when you're doing it just by measurements alone, it's a lot easier to make mistakes. And for something that is as intricate as a bag project like this, even just a few millimeters off can really affect the overall shape of the bag. And yeah, I found that disappointing from the very get-go. The other issue that I had is that I didn't find the instructions gelled with me particularly well. I feel like sometimes the directions weren't necessarily as specific as they could be. And although I haven't made bags before, I've made project bags, but nothing as kind of involved as a big project like this, I was struggling and having to reread instructions several times in order to get my brain into gear and really understand what was being asked of me. Something that is as intricate as a project like this, I feel you need to be incredibly specific. It's also great that there are lots of pictures included with the patterns, but a lot of the pictures were literally just pictures of a pattern piece. There were no arrows pointing in the right direction or this connecting with this to really clarify. So although all of the information that you need in order to make the bag is included, it could just do with a lot more clarity and specificity in my opinion. It may be that I haven't made many bag projects before, but it's very rare that I actually come across a sewing project that leaves me feeling a little bit confused because of the experience that I've had with sewing very complex garments and that type of thing. So I would say if you are getting started on making bags, although this was my first bag project, maybe start with something a little bit more simple, just because, yeah, it was a little bit of a head scratcher at times. When this project was going well, it was an absolute joy, but there were times when I was getting incredibly frustrated and particularly when you are manipulating fabrics that are all kind of thick and using fabrics that are slightly more complicated like waxed cottons and stabilizing fabrics that make everything thicker, you can feel like you're wrestling some kind of beast. So anything that makes that process more simple is appreciated, and anything that makes it feel overcomplicated is just not something that you're interested in. So all of that to one side, what I would say is I am absolutely enamoured of the finished project. I do feel like it came together beautifully. I am so happy that I have this bag. This is actually going to be the bag that I take to hospital with me. So I'm going to fill it up with all of the things that I need for labour, huzzah, and I know that I'm going to get an awful lot of use from it when the baby is actually here. So I love the finished project, I really, really do. All of the issues that I had when I was constructing the bag and with the pattern kind of fade away a little bit when I look at the finished project because I'm so happy with it. But I would say definitely an intermediate or advanced project, and just be sure to take your time with the instructions. And if you are going to make this similar project, just be aware that there are points when it may feel a little bit overwhelming and a little bit unclear, but if you can push through to the very, very end, then you should be absolutely fine. So that is pretty much everything about my nappy bag, you guys. Like I said, I'm thrilled with it. I'm so happy with how it turned out. It's just, oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm incredibly proud of the fact that I made it. I would love to know if any of you have experience in bag making, and if you could maybe recommend any other pattern producers that you like to use, because as I said, although I really enjoyed this, I think I'd probably look for a different pattern company next time, just for my own sanity. But and for now, I hope you all have a really, really lovely day, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Bye!